Welcome to Yankee Chronicle. I'm your host, Elizabeth D'Orazio, joining you right here on Main Street in New London from the First Baptist Church. And this is a perfect time to hear a message of hope and mission of this wonderful community doing God's work right here in the center of town. I'm joined by Charles Glidewell, the pastor, and he's going to tell us a little bit about the history of this church and how they continue to work with us. Good to see you.
Good to see you. So glad to be doing this.
Yes, and what a timely message for all of us during the COVID pandemic and all the things that have really struck us in the world. We're really kind of shaken up. And tell us how this church has kind of weathered that and how through history it's been here for the community.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. So we, like all churches, we're trying to figure out how to weather it. Fortunately for us, is we were already streaming our services online, so that helped. So we just continued to do that, though it was a little weird just talking into a camera and not having
Right.
people, to engage with. But we are now meeting in person on Sunday mornings. As you can see, we've got the meeting house taped off. So we're socially distancing. People are wearing masks, and it's really been incredible to see the way that people have continued to contribute in a variety of ways. People have really stepped up. They know that it's a difficult time, and so really the people of our church, they've had other people in mind, knowing that people are isolated, that people are lonely. And so, for instance, our board of deacons, they've really stepped up their phone calling and letter writing and things like that. So it's been really wonderful for me to see. And as you said, you said history, and our church has a terrific history. To me, it's really interesting to read about. And what I've discovered over the years, this is my 10th year here, and so over the years I've done a lot of digging into the history of the church. It's very interesting to me. And in many ways, the history of the First Baptist Church is the history of the town of New London. You go back and read about one of the first items of business was they needed to establish a place of worship. And interestingly, in so many of your New England towns, the church is a congregational church, but many of the first citizens of New London were Baptists. They came up from Attleboro, Mass, and they ended up calling a Baptist pastor from Attleboro, Mass, as their first pastor, and then it went from there. So you have the establishment of the New Hampshire Baptist Convention. Joseph Colby, very involved lay member in this church, he was the president of that, and he was reelected 2 times after that to serve as president. They had the first meeting right here in New London in his house. You have the New Hampshire Confession of Faith, which our church was instrumental in forming about what Baptists believe, and that actually has influenced Baptists across the nation. And you have the establishment of the New London Academy, which eventually became Colby Sawyer College. Again, Joseph's son, Anthony Colby, he was instrumental in that. And so you have a lot of history here, not only with the church, but as I say, it's almost completely intertwined with the town.
It seems almost impossible to separate those two.
That's
and
right.
One of the things about becoming a pastor is you take the mantle from those before you, but it's not just you. When you sit in a church, you see the front of the helm of the ship, the pastor, but we have to remember the pews are really the ones that, do the work in the world. Tell us about how, like you mentioned your council of deacons, but tell us about the laity doing their work right now and some of the missions you have.
That's exactly right. Pastors come and go, and pastors, we have our place, but it's really the people who do the work of the church and who keep it going. And as I say, our church, any opportunity they can find to help, to serve, they do that. So we have people delivering meals. We have numerous community organizations that we support in a variety of ways. And you have people who are concerned about people, and so they will make phone calls, they will check in, whether they know them or not. They'll deliver food. We support people if it comes to that, monetarily, if they need help in that regard. And we also partner with other community organizations to help make those kinds of things happen.
As the weather gets a little bit cold, and we've been through the darkness of COVID, and now we're entering into the cold of winter when the seasonal needs come up, can you give us perhaps a Christmas message of hope?
Yeah. everything that we do here, my ultimate hope is that people have an encounter with Jesus, because that changes everything. And to me, the message of Christmas, there's a great word that we find in the Bible. It's in both the Old Testament and the New Testament. It's a wonderful word, and it's not God. It's not, we find that word. It's not love. It's actually the word with. And I've been reflecting on that. That's something that God says again and again and again. He says to Moses, I will be with you. He says to Joshua, be strong and courageous. Don't be terrified. Don't be discouraged. Those are words we need to hear right now. The Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. He says that to Gideon, I will be with you. The psalmist, he asks the question, where can I go from your presence? And he concludes, nowhere, because God is always with him. We find this at the beginning and in the end of the Gospels. Jesus is identified as Emmanuel, God with us. And the very last thing that Jesus says to his disciples is, I will be with you even to the end of the age. And so that's what I would remind people of, is that God is not remote, but he's here and he's with us. And he's only a prayer away.
That's wonderful. Thank you for joining us. And if you're looking for a place to have a Christmas home this year, the First Baptist Church will be virtually streaming their services. Make sure you check them out online. This is a place where faith and community are intertwined with the story of New London. When we return, Nancy Allenby and Cindy Johnson of the Kearsarge Neighborhood Partners will tell us how they work with the New London Baptist Church to bring their good works to the community.